it's Jess. Welcome back to my channel. I'm so excited for today's video. I'm sure you've already seen the thumbnail, read the title, so you know what this is gonna be, but this is one of my favorite videos to film. I love it. I get so excited. This is going to be all of the books that I cannot wait to read that come out in 2025. Just a little caveat, these are the books that I personally am the most excited to read. So this definitely is not like a comprehensive list of all of the big titles that are coming out next year. Okay, I have so many books to talk about, so we need to get moving. By the way, if you see me looking down, it's because I have my notebook here with my notes in it. Let's get going because this might be a long video. First up, on January 7th, we have Wake Up and Open Your Eyes by Clay Chapman. This is an adult horror novel. In this book, we're following Noah, who has been slowly losing his polite Southern parents to far-right cable news for years. And then one day, his mother leaves him a voicemail saying that the Great Reawakening is here, and he's like, well, that can't be good. And then she will not respond to any of his calls. Neither of his parents will call him back, so he drives down to his parents' house. Once he gets to his parents' house, he finds them in this like weird trance in front of the TV, and when he tries to snap them out of it, his mother attacks him. And this is something that sort of is like happening all over the area. So many people, almost everyone, is affected by this. The only person in Noah's family not affected is his nephew. So now Noah has to get him and his nephew back to Brooklyn before they're ripped apart by these vicious hordes. It sounds like it's going to be kind of like a zombie adjacent novel with a twist. It sounds like there's going to be a lot of social commentary. I'm particularly interested in this because I have actually lost some friends to radicalization. As someone who has experienced seeing people they care about become bigots, I'm excited to give this book a go. It seems like it's going to be a good time. Well, actually, it seems like it's going to be a terrifying time, but you know, same thing. On January 14th, we have multiple books coming out. First up, I want to talk about the one that everyone is excited for, Witchcraft for Wayward Girls by Grady Hendrix. This is set in 1970 at Wellwood House in Florida, and you follow Fern and 12 other girls who have been sent to this house. They are pregnant and they're sent there so that they can have their babies in secret and then put the babies up for adoption and then return home to their families. At the house, the girls are very controlled until one day a librarian gives an occult book to Fern, and then the girls start to get some power. But the problem is power can destroy as easily as it creates, and it's never given freely. So I am really interested in this book. I have enjoyed to loved everything that I have read by Grady Hendrix. Previously, I've read 3 of his books. I absolutely love witchy books. I am a little hesitant about this, mainly because while I still enjoy Grady Hendrix books, they are not perfect. There are definitely a couple of problematic issues I have had. Small, minor things, certainly not enough to stop me from reading his books. And also, like, sometimes there's like a little bit of weirdness in this man writing women. And again, not enough to make me stop reading, but some weirdness. So I am a little hesitant about this one specifically because I do think that this is a story that needs to be told with empathy. And also, like, all the main characters of this book are going to be teenage girls. And while I really enjoyed My Best Friend's Exorcism for like the funness and the camp of it, I don't think Grady Hendrix channeled a teenage girl enough in that book. Now, here's the thing. That book was one of his earlier novels, but I really, really want to see Grady Hendrix like channel what it's like to be a teenage girl. I want to like feel like I am re-experiencing girlhood when I read this book. And I also want it to be handled with care and empathy. So we'll see. Hopefully I feel like a teenage girl reading this book. Either way though, I'm still gonna read this and I fully expect to enjoy it. Also coming out is Babylonia by Costanza Casati. This is a historical reimagining. I'm not sure if there's going to be fantastical elements or not. This is by the author of Clytemnestra, which was her debut novel, which I own and have not read. So in this, we are following a common woman, the governor she married, and the king who loved them both. It's a story of Semiramis, the only female ruler of the Assyrian Empire. I don't know shit about this from a historical point of view, and I'm not gonna let myself get this book until I read Clytemnestra, and then we'll see. I'm just really excited because I just feel like these are books for me. I feel like Costanza Casati is just going to be an author that I like. I don't know what I'm basing that on. It's just a gut feeling. Maybe it's just because the covers are so pretty on her books. I don't know. Maybe it's because her books seem to have a little bit to do with angry women. I'm really hoping to pick up Clytemnestra by the end of this month. I need to finish a couple books before I can do that though, so fingers crossed. We also have Lightfall by Ed Crocker coming out. This is an adult fantasy debut, and the reason that this is on my radar is because it's a vampire story. This is projected to be the first book in a trilogy, and we are in the last vampire city of First Light, where class determines the quality of the blood that you're able to drink. And in this, we follow Sam, who's a maid and fed up and wants a better life, wants better blood to drink. She ends up joining a group of rebel maids, teaming up with a sorcerer detective and an assassin werewolf and a countess who knows everyone's secrets. It sounds like it could be really, really fun and interesting. I think that this is a book that I'm going to keep my eye on. I love vampire stories, but I'm probably not going to pick this up as a brand new release unless it's getting amazing reviews, in which case I just won't be able to help myself. Coming up on January 21st, we have We Do Not Part by Han Kang. This is adult literary fiction. I have only read one of their books. I read Human Acts, but it became not only a favorite of the year, but a favorite of all time. I think about that book constantly and I highly recommend it. I do need to read more of their backlist, but for now, I'm very excited that they have a new release coming out. In this, we follow Kyunga, who gets a message from a friend who's in the hospital after an accident, and her friend asks her to go to Jeju Island to save her pet, which is this white bird. When Kyunga gets to the island, as she arrives, a terrible snowstorm breaks out. I think that we're gonna get like a little bit of a survival story as she tries to make it to her friend's house, but that's only part of the story because it says, lost in the snow, she doesn't yet expect the vertiginous plunge into the darkness that awaits at her friend's house. We Do Not Part powerfully illuminates a forgotten chapter in Korean history, buried for decades, bringing light to the voices lost of the past to save them from oblivion. Both a hymn to enduring friendship and an argument for remembering, it is the story of profound love in the face of unspeakable violence, a celebration of life, however fragile it might be. I am not super familiar with all of Korea's history. Honestly, history in general is a weak point in my education. I did some Googling and I think that this is about the Jeju Massacre of 1948. Don't take anything I'm saying here as like 100% fact. This is just what I have discovered on a quick Google. I think that the Korean people, the South Korean people, were voted voting for a president of South Korea, and there were protests at the time. A lot of people thought that if they voted in a president, it would make reunification of the two Koreas even more difficult. And so they were protesting that because they wanted reunification, and the South Korean government and military cracked down and massacred thousands and thousands of people on Jeju Island. It was estimated that 30,000 people died. I think this is going to be an extremely difficult read, but also I think it is going to be beautiful. Human Acts was devastating. Absolutely devastating to read, but at the same time it was very beautiful. Han Kang is an absolute master of their craft, and I can't wait to read this. We also have Moth Eater by Linda H. Kodega coming out. This is an adult fantasy. It is a queer witchy story set in the Appalachian Mountains, which I think is going to be a really fun setting. Well, not fun. I think it's going to be creepy, but I think the creepiness is going to work well with it being a witchy story. In this, we follow Benny Maddox, who quits her job after her best friend dies in a coal mine so that she can investigate, because apparently multiple miners have been dead or killed in this mine. And then she finds a half-drowned woman who has lost her memory called Moth Eater, and all she knows is that she's a witch of Appalachia. Sounds great to me. I love witchy stories. I think that this is going to be a super creepy time. Again, on the same day, we have The Legend of Maneka by Kritika H. Rao. This is an adult fantasy romance. This is based on Hindu mythology, and we follow Maneka, who is a celestial dancer. She's trained as a warrior and uses illusions to seduce whoever Lord Indra, King of Heaven, demands for political gain. But she hates what she does and she wants her freedom. So one day, Lord Indra demands that she seduce this human sage who has, I guess, too much power for the gods to feel comfortable. She strikes up a deal with him saying that if she does this last one, this is going to be her last one. She's going to be free after this. She's going to retire from seducing men. And then after that, I believe it's going to be a story of duty versus love. It is definitely a fantasy romance, so I'm assuming that her and the sage are going to fall in love. I don't know anything about the mythology that this is based off of, and I probably won't look into it until after I read the book. I just was really attracted to this because in JRPGs, I love the dancer class. It's so fun. It's like beautiful. It's romantic. If you don't know, I'm like a massive Final Fantasy fan, and I just love the dancer class. So I was like, oh my god, a celestial dancer? Amazing. Sign me up for this. Moving along to February, I only have one book that I want to talk about. It's Dance of Shadows by Gaurav Mohanty. This is an adult fantasy. It's the sequel to Sons of Darkness and the second book in a series where I'm not sure how long the series is going to be. I bought Sons of Darkness as a birthday present to myself. Jake always takes me book shopping for my birthday, and I haven't read it yet because I suck. I honestly don't remember what the synopsis of this book is about. I used to know. Obviously, I read the synopsis before I bought the book, but I just don't remember at this point. This is basically on the list because I like to keep track of sequels to books where I own the first book or am in the middle of reading a series. Don't have much to say about this, but I'm keeping an eye on it. On March 4th, we have Oathbound by Tracy Deonn. This is book 3 in the Legendborn cycle. This is a young adult fantasy series where we follow Bree, who gets an early admission to college, and then once she gets to college, she sees some things and some creatures that shouldn't exist, that she's not supposed to be able to see, and that kind of becomes this gateway to her being inducted into this secret society. And this whole secret society is based off of King Arthur and Camelot and is meant to like kind of protect society from demons and other creatures. It's fantastic. I've read book 1. I have not read book 2, but I definitely need to before March 4th so that I can pick up book 3. Also on March 4th, we have The River Has Teeth by Amal El Motar. This is an adult fantasy, and I've kind of intentionally not looked too much into this book because it's only 144 pages. All I know is that we're following 2 sisters who tend plants in a village that lives like right next to the border of Fairy, and it says, "What is stronger than death? 2 sisters singing with one breath." Sign me up. Sounds great. We also have The Unworthy by Augustina Bastarrica. This is adult horror, and in this we follow a woman in a convent who is writing her story in whatever material she can come across. Dirt, discarded ink, sometimes even her own blood. She is trying to ascend the ranks in the religious sect of the convent that she is living in. Meanwhile, outside of the convent, the world at large is dealing with a bunch of catastrophic conditions due to the climate crisis. And then a new woman shows up at the convent and forces the narrator to examine her past, the state of the world, and the religious sect that she is a part of. It's supposed to be a searing dystopian tale about climate crisis, ideological extremism, and the tidal pull of our most violent, exploitative instincts. I don't think I need to say anything more than that. It sounds fantastic. We also have Days of Shattered Faith by Adrian Tchaikovsky. This is an adult fantasy book. It is the 3rd book in the Tyrant Philosophers series, which I'm not sure how long that's going to be. Once again, this is on my list simply because I own book 1, which I have not read, and I'm just keeping track of the sequel just for my own purposes. I have not started this series. No, I suck. The first book is about like a city that is on the brink of rebellion and revolution. I refuse to read the synopsises of book 2 and 3 because I don't want to spoil myself. I will be reading book 1 in this series next year. I have to. I have been dying to read it, and Adrian Tchaikovsky is like a super well-beloved author in the sci-fi and fantasy space, and I need to try out something from him. On March 18th, we have 2 books coming out. The first being The Buffalo Hunter Hunter. This is Stephen Graham Jones's newest release. It's adult horror. It is historical, set in 1912, where you're reading the transcript of a Lutheran priest who is writing about the life of a vampire. Like, first of all, Stephen Graham Jones is an auto-buy author for me. He is my favorite adult horror author. Like, it's not even a contest. I will read every single book that he writes eventually, but like, also, it's a vampire book. My favorite horror author writing about a vampire. This might be my single most anticipated release of the entire year. It also comes out 4 days after my birthday, so thank you. Thank you for the birthday present, Stephen. We also have another book that everyone is excited about. It's Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. I don't need to tell you guys about this. This is the newest book in the Hunger Games series. It is the 50th annual Hunger Games, which means it's also a quarter quell. This is the one that follows Haymitch, and this is the one where there is double the amount of tributes. I'm very excited, but I do still have to read Mockingjay and A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes before I let myself read this, but those are coming soon, I promise. On March 25th, we have Blood on Her Tongue by Johanna Van Veen. This is also adult horror. It is gothic, which is something that I love. I love, love, love gothic. But in this, we follow Lucy, whose twin sister is unwell. She won't eat, she mumbles to herself, and she's becoming more and more obsessed with a corpse that was discovered on her husband's estate. How creepy does that sound? Lucy does not want her sister to be sent to an asylum, understandably, so Lucy tries to figure out what is going on, but her sister keeps getting worse and worse, and then it says that she's becoming hungry. So I don't know what that means. I don't know what's going on, but sign me up. We also have The Serpent Called Mercy by Roanne Lau. This is an adult fantasy and it's pitched as The Witcher meets Squid Game, which sounds fantastic. In this we follow Lythla and her friend Diesel, who sign up to fight sun-cursed beasts. Don't know what sun-cursed beasts are, but sure, sounds interesting. And they fight them in like an underground fighting pit / coliseum type of situation. And they're doing this as a way to get out of poverty and pay their debts. And then the match master ends up taking Lythlet sorry, under his wing after seeing her fight. She begins to dream of wealth and fame. And the question becomes, what is she willing to sacrifice to get that wealth and fame? Moving to April. On April 1st, we have A Drop of Corruption by Robert Jackson Bennett. This is adult fantasy. It's book 2 in the Shadow of the Leviathan series, the first one being The Tainted Cup. I'm keeping my eye on this series as a whole. This is an adult fantasy murder mystery that is inspired by Sherlock Holmes, and I don't really know anything else about the plot. Honestly, I don't need to know anything else about the plot. I marathoned the Foundry Side series back to back by the same author and I loved it. It was super fast paced, super interesting. It's a really great series to just read through in one go. So I'm keeping my eye on the release dates for this series because I'm thinking that it might also be a good series to marathon. However, I'm curious because this is like a mystery fantasy series. I'm wondering if like each book is its own mystery, just like with the same detectives trying to figure it out, in which case each book could like sort of be read as like an interconnected standalone. I'm too afraid to read the synopsis of book 2 to know. So please, if you've read this book, let me know in the comments if this is something where I can wait for the series to be finished and then just marathon the whole thing through like I want to, or if they're each kind of interconnected standalones with like no arching story plot and I can just read them individually. Because I don't know and I'm too afraid to Google it because I don't want anything spoiled, especially because this is a mystery series. It's so easy to spoil mystery series. Either way, still keeping my eye on this series. On April 8th, we have The Book That Held Her Heart by Mark Lawrence. This is adult fantasy and the third and final book in the Library trilogy, which is very exciting. I own the first book in this series. Hopefully I can just marathon all of them through. Book 1, the synopsis is pretty vague, but you're following a boy and a girl, but the boy has spent his entire life in this library, and it's very much like a book series about books. Mark Lawrence is high on my list of authors that I would like to give a try to. Another series that I would like to start and finish in 2025. On May 6th, we have The Manor of Dreams by Christina Lee. I am unsure exactly what genre this is going to be. It's pitched as Mexican Gothic meets The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, but this is a story about Vivian Yin, who is the first Chinese actress to win an Oscar, and then at the height of her fame, she basically left and decided to live in seclusion. But at the start of the novel, she has died, and her daughter expects to inherit her house, but a last-minute change to the will leaves it to another family. So in order to contest the will, both the daughter and the family move into the house, and then her daughter starts piecing together the last few weeks of Vivian's life, trying to figure out what happened. But the more time all of these people spend in the house, they start having visions and acting weird because the house might be haunted. So it might be horror. I just don't know. We'll see. On May 13th, we have a book that I feel like I am the only person looking forward to. I feel like I'm the only person that enjoyed book 1 in this series, but we have A Curse Carved in Bone by Danielle L. Jensen. This is adult fantasy romance, and this is book 2 in the Saga of the Unfated, and it is a duology, so this will conclude the series. This is a series where you follow Freya, and she has a drop of God's blood, and she is a shield maiden with protection magic, but there is this prophecy that says that whoever controls the shield maiden fate will like unite and rule the land. So she has been hiding, but she is forced to reveal her powers in order to save her own life, and then the Jarl of her land takes her as his second wife in order to control her fate so that he can unite these kingdoms and rule as king over all of them. As part of this, she has to use her power, which is again shield like protection magic. So the Jarl has his son train her, and then the two of them begin to fall in love. I loved this book. A lot of people did not like it, and that's totally fine. The reason that people don't like it is totally valid. A lot of people don't like Freya as the main character, and honestly, I understand why they don't like her. I just personally didn't have a problem with her. But this book is like really meandering. But I personally have side quest mentality, and I love a meandering story. I love when you're trying to get from point A to point B, but like roadblocks keep popping up, so then you have to take like multiple detours to get there. Like, I just love it. So I cannot wait for book 2 in this series. On May 20th, we have The Starving Saints by Caitlin Starling. This is adult horror. In this, we're following 3 women who have been trapped in a castle that's been under siege for 6 months. And food is scarce, and the survivors are considering thinning the ranks of the people living there deliberately. But then a miracle happens. The divine constant lady and her saints arrive despite the barricade and the siege. The sick are healed and the stores are replenished. Soon everyone in the castle is under their sway, partaking in intoxicating feasts of terrible origin. As the castle descends into bacchanalian madness, forgetting that there's an army outside, these 3 women are the only ones that can see what's really happening. Sounds like a fever dream. This book sounds so good. We also have The Night and the Moth coming out by Rachel Gillig. This is an adult fantasy romance. So I didn't read the One Dark Window series. I just honestly wasn't interested in it. This one has my interest piqued though, because we're following Sybil, who is a foundling who traded 10 years of her life for a home in the Great Cathedral. She is a diviner and her dreams can predict the future. But then some of her sister diviners begin to disappear, and Sybil enlists the help of a rude heretical knight who shows up at the cathedral, and she basically makes him help her find them. I just think like this whole dynamic of like a seer and a knight, I think it's going to be fun. I'm interested to know why the title is The Night and the Moth. I don't know. It seems like it could be a good time. So I'm going to try it out. Then on June 10th, we have Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil by V.E. Schwab. This is an adult fantasy. And I'm going to be honest, at first I actually wasn't interested in this book. I really enjoy V.E. Schwab's more like standard fantasy books. Like, I don't know how to describe them, but like A Darker Shade of Magic, love that series. Vicious, love that series. But Addie LaRue, I thought was like fine. It was good, but like in my opinion, nothing to write home about. So I think that this is also going to be one of her more literary leaning novels. And I was like, okay, that's fine. Like, I'll just read her more, I don't know, traditional fantasy or whatever, and I'll skip her literary ones. However, she said on, I think, Instagram that this is a lesbian vampire story. And I was like, okay, never mind, I need it. Yeah, I need this book. The synopsis is super vague. All it says is 3 young women, their bodies planted in the same soil, their stories tangling like roots. One grows high, one grows deep, and one grows wild, and all of them grow teeth. Lesbian vampires. Yep, I'm gonna read this book. Next up, we have Silverborn, which comes out June 24th. Now, this is the 4th book in the Nevermore series. It is Silverborn, The Mystery of Morrigan Crow by Jessica Townsend. This is a middle grade fantasy series that I highly, highly recommend. It is so very whimsical and adorable and cute and just like a hug for your heart. I love it. You're following Morrigan, who is a cursed child, and she's destined destined to die on her 11th birthday, but instead she is whisked away to a magical hotel and invited to compete to join a magical society. And yeah, it's her making friends, finding a family that cares about her, and then occasionally, saving the world, as they do in middle grade stories. I'm very excited about this because this is the first time that the cover has been updated and released. This book's release date has been pushed back several years at this point. It was supposed to come out, I believe, in 2022. Hopefully this is actually going to be the release date. I'm still hesitant because I'm not gonna, really believe this until I see the book in the actual world, but hopefully the fact that there's now a cover is a good sign and we will finally see this book in 2025. On July 1st, we have The Nightblood Prince by Molly X. Chang. This is young adult fantasy and also romance. I am a little bit hesitant about this because it is young adult. We will see. Sometimes I don't care about young adult, sometimes I love it. So we'll see, but I'm keeping my eye on this because this is a vampire story. So in this, we're following two princes, one prophecy, a fate she can't outrun. So basically the main character, Faye, on the night she was born, a prophecy was made that she would be the empress of all empresses. And as a result, she was taken away from her family as a child and brought to the palace because one day she is to marry the crown prince, but she basically spends her entire life in a state of loneliness. One day, an opportunity arises for her to seize her own destiny, and she sets out to hunt a legendary tiger. And there she meets a runaway prince from a rival kingdom, and he is blessed by the night and has a dangerous magic and commands an army of deadly vampires. We're gonna see. This is a beautiful cover. I hope that the book matches the cover. On July 8th, we have Ascension by S.T. Gibson. This is adult fantasy and it's book 2 in the Summoner's Circle, which I believe is projected to be 4 novels, but there also is a prequel novella in this series. I haven't read book 1, but I have read 2 other books by S.T. Gibson and I loved both of them, so I do have full confidence that I am also going to like this. Book 1 is about David who's has a curse by the devil. I don't remember, but he enlists the help of his ex-boyfriend and his ex-boyfriend's wife. And I believe the real story, the real plot, is about the 3 of them and the relationship that they all have with each other. Potentially romance blossoming, friendship blossoming. I would think that book 2 would probably be more of the fantasy plot with the demons and maybe the curse that he has or whatever. I don't know. Going to read book 1 very soon. Take a shot for every single time I tell you about a book where I haven't even started the series. On July 15th, we have A Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping by Sangu Mandana. This is an adult fantasy romance, and this is the second time the release date has been pushed for this. So again, I'm hesitant to say for sure this is coming out on July 15th. This sounds so cozy and so cute. So we're following a witch named Sarah Swan who resurrected her great aunt, and because of that she was exiled and she lost her magic, and now with her slightly villainous fox she's running a magical inn with that aunt. And then one day she finds an old spell that might be able to restore her powers, so she enlists Luke, who is a magical historian, to help her unlock the secrets of the spell. It just sounds so cute. Like a magical fox, magical inn, sign me up. We also have The Bewitching, which is Sylvia Moreno Garcia's newest release. This is adult horror, and I'm gonna be real honest, I do not like this cover. But I do like Sylvia Moreno Garcia's writing. I love her stories. So this is a multi-generational witch story. It follows 3 women, but primarily Minerva, who is a grad student focused on the history of horror literature, specifically the life of Beatrice Tremblay, an obscure author. And then one day she uncovers evidence that Tremblay's most famous novel is based on truth. And as she digs more, she finds connection between Tremblay's stories and stories that her Nana told her from 1900s Mexico, and perhaps is seeing some things happening in her own life. Thank you, Silvia Moreno Garcia, for writing a story about witches. Thank you so much. On August 5th, we have Black Flame, another adult horror. This is by Gretchen Felker, and in this you follow Ellen, who's a closeted lesbian. It's set in 1980s New York City, and she spends her time restoring films. One day she's asked to restore an infamous exploitation film that was thought to be destroyed in the Holocaust. She's asked to restore it by German academics, and the more she restores, the more obsessed she gets until she starts thinking the acts in the film are happening to her. So the premise of this is really interesting. I like the idea of her restoring films. I like the 1980s New York setting. I am going to wait for reviews of this, not because I don't think that I would like it. Like, obviously it's on this list for a reason. I think that I would enjoy this. However, due to the nature that this is about an exploitation film, which the fact that it was thought to be destroyed in the Holocaust makes me think that it might be all wrapped up in like the Nazi party and all of that stuff, and it's an exploitation film, I am a bit worried that the content will be too much for me. So I'm gonna let other people read this first, and then I'm gonna decide based on their reviews if this is content that I am capable of consuming. On August 19th, we have another book by an auto-buy author for me. We have The Possession of Alba Diaz by Isabel Canes. This is adult horror, and it's also going to have a romance. Isabel Canes is just like, her writing style is perfection. If you like gothic, and I mean like truly gothic prose the way it is meant to be done, this is the author for you. Like, I'm telling you, it's so good. It's set in 1765, and we follow Alba, who flees to a mine on her fiance's property to escape a plague, which honestly seems like a weird choice. If I were trying to flee a plague, I don't think a mine would be my first choice to look for safety, but there's like probably a reason within the story and context that makes it make sense. It seems like a demon in the mines is going to possess her, and she's going to turn to her fiance's cousin for help. Demon possession story, fantastic. Isabel Canes' writing, fantastic. I'm definitely going to read this 100%. We also have The Once and Future Me by Melissa Pace. This is an adult thriller, and I'm not gonna lie, the first thing that attracted this to me was the title, because I love The Once and Future King, one of my favorite classics. But this is pitched as Dark Matter meets Girl Interrupted, which has me very intrigued. It's about a woman who wakes up on a transport bus arriving at Hanover State Psychiatric Hospital, and she remembers nothing. She's told by her doctor that she's Dorothy Fraser, a paranoid schizophrenic committed by the state for her violent delusions, and that it's 1954. But the problem is, she knows that none of this is true. Then she starts having these delusional episodes where she finds herself in a broken future where scientists are telling her to find a doctor in 1954. And then back in 1954, she starts having a visitor that her doctor says is her loving husband. It sounds like it's going to be a combination of a broken timeline plus an unreliable narrator plus the amnesia trope. It just sounds like really fascinating. I think an asylum in 1954 is going to be one of the creepiest settings possible for a thriller, so sign me up for this one. And next up, we have Hemlock and Silver, which is T. Kingfisher's newest release. This, I believe, is going to be fantasy. It is a Snow White retelling. Well, not like retelling, but like reimagining. We follow Anya, who's a healer who drinks poison in order to find cures for people that have been forgotten or that can't be cured by other healers. One day she's summoned by the king because his daughter Snow is sick, and as she tries to figure out how to cure Snow, nothing is working until she finds a secret world hidden inside a magic mirror. I've only read one book by T. Kingfisher, but I loved it. It was fantastic. It sounds like a great time. Looking forward to it. In September, so far, I'm only excited for one book. I'm sure that there will be more books by the time we actually get to September. But on the 2nd, we have Frankenstein's Monster by J.S. Barnes. I'm not sure whether this is going to be a sci-fi book or if it's going to be a horror book, but this is supposed to be a sequel to Frankenstein, which is one of my favorite classics. I love Frankenstein, so I'm always excited to read books inspired by Frankenstein. So for this one, we start the book in 1842, where underneath the Thames, workmen digging uncover something monstrous sleeping, and then in Norfolk, a ragged stranger arrives at the home of philosopher Samuel Green and starts conducting strange experiments. Then we move forward to 1850, where stories spreading in London of someone living in the shadows helping people in need. And then in Newgate Prison, the philosopher Samuel Green stands accused of murder. I don't know what's going on, but sign me up for this, because I want to read every book inspired by Frankenstein. In October, I had 2 books that I'm excited for, both of which release on October 7th. The first one I'll talk about is Queen Demon by Martha Wells. This is adult fantasy, and I'm so vindicated that this book is coming out. This is book 2 in the Rising World, and it's the sequel to Witch King. I have no idea if this is just going to be these 2 books or if there's going to be more involved. When Witch King came out, there was really no knowledge that we had that it was going to be a series, and everyone was saying that it was a standalone. And I mean, I also, because there was no knowledge that it was going to be, also did say that it was a standalone. I'm gonna be honest, I said it was, but I remember when I read this book and after I was done with it, I distinctly remember saying that it needed to be a series because this book is so confusing. Sorry, not Queen Demon. Witch King was so confusing and not in a good way. I am someone that has read many confusing books, and I also read a lot of dense fantasy. So I'm pretty experienced within the fantasy genre of just being dropped into a world and having to scramble and figure out what's going on. This book, it was too much. It was confusing in not a good way. I totally get why so many people did not like this book, why they DNF'd it, and why a lot of people that did finish it say that the payoff at the end was not worth it. I am in the camp that the confusion of this book was bad and not enjoyable to read, but that the payoff at the end was in fact worth it. And I actually ended up rating this book 4 stars overall. But I will say, the first half of this book was a 2-star rating, maybe even a 1.5, but the second half of the book was a 5-star rating and saved the entire thing. And I remember saying when I read Witch King that Martha Wells just did too much world building. She did too much world building if this book was just going to be a standalone fantasy. And so I remember saying it needs to be a series in order to make the first book actually good. So now I'm vindicated because it is a series, and I'm sure all of that useless information that didn't matter is now going to matter. This is a series that follows Kai, who is a demon, and he was imprisoned in this water trap, and when he wakes up, it's because somebody has infiltrated his tomb and is trying to steal his powers. That obviously doesn't work because he's super powerful, so he kills the dude trying to steal his powers. But the problem is he doesn't really remember what happened right before he was imprisoned. So he doesn't know who did it. He doesn't know who betrayed him. He doesn't know what the sequence of events leading up to him being imprisoned are. And so he has to try and track down his friends and figure out what the hell is going on. I can't wait to read this book, and I definitely am going to have to sit down and read an in-depth bullet point of what happened in book 1, because I'm gonna be real, I don't remember. And I don't think I have the mental capacity to reread it, but still very excited that this book is coming out. And now we are finally at the last book in this video, which is way too long because I can't shut up and I'm excited about too many books. But it's The Ballad of Falling Dragons by Sarah A. Parker. This is an adult romantic fantasy heavy on the romance. This is the sequel to When the Moon Hatched and book 2 in the Moonfall series, which we, as of right now, do not know how long that series is going to be. To be honest, I don't really feel like I need to talk about this book all that much. When the Moon Hatched has been massively successful this year. It is one of the most read books of 2024. So I feel like everyone knows what this book is about. And I feel like everyone who read this book either gives it like 1 or 2 stars or 5 stars. And I'm in the 5-star camp. I mean, technically I rated it 4.5 stars because, to be perfectly honest, this is not a perfect book. And I had some issues with things where I'm like, this is stupid. This right here, this is stupid. I still love the book. Book 1 is again like a little bit meandering, a little bit all over the place, which as I mentioned, I love that. And book 1 really is just a setup book for the rest of the series, where like we're just moving things to where they need to be, and we get a couple of reveals that are going to set up like the overall series plot. But I had a fantastic experience reading this book. I loved it and I can't wait for book 2. There you have it. Those are my most anticipated releases for 2025. I think it's going to be an outstanding year for books. Thank you for spending time with me today. Thank you for being here. Let me know what your most anticipated book that's coming out next year is. I would love to know what book you are most looking forward to for next year. Maybe it's a book I haven't even heard of and I can add it to my never-ending TBR. If you enjoyed this video, please consider subscribing. I hope that you stay safe this week, stay warm. Please, please, please be safe this holiday season, and I'll see you next week. Goodbye.